Viewers, welcome to the talk show Promise Bangladesh, sponsored by Crown Cement. And this is Sinha A.M.S. Sayeed anchoring this very talk show. And today we have invited the guests who are very known to the nation from their own standpoint also. And one is Mohammad Nurul Huda, former Inspector General of Police and Secretary to the government. How are you, Mr. Huda?
I'm fine today.
Thank you. Other being Mr. Touhid Hossain, former Foreign Secretary and diplomatic analyst. How are you, Mr. Touhid?
Fine, thank you.
Well, Mr. Nurul Huda, you know very well that many things are taking place in Bangladesh at this very moment, centering the Quota in particular. And being a former IG and Secretary to the government, how do you view the whole thing?
Well, the quota issue has to be seen from the historical perspective. Well, I am a Pakistan time appointee. So during those times, there used to be quota system also. And the Punjabis who thought they were at the receiving end because of the quota system, they coined a lot of expressions, much of them very pejorative, like, oh, you are jute quota. Then about the northwest frontier province appointees, they will say, oh, you are apple quota. So quota system was necessary in order to bring a sense of equality or in the administrative interest. If we look at India, there are constitutional provisions for scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and also other backward castes also. So, although there are many movements against it, the caste Hindus who suffer because of that, they think that this is discriminatory, this is putting us in a very tight corner. But despite that, it remains in the constitution because backward sections of people have to be brought forward. The situation in Bangladesh is not exactly like that. Here, there are sections of population who need protection, or areas or regions where there have not been the kind of development which is there in the other parts. So, for them quota is necessary. Constitution does not say anything specifically about it. It says it in general terms that for backward people or areas, there has to be some measures. How that would be done, the mechanism, the modalities, that would be done by the government. Now, entering public service is a very sought after thing. So, obviously, if the quota percentage is much larger or to them disproportionate, then obviously there is a reason to feel aggrieved and people would wage a movement against that. Now that it has gone to the court and there is a chance of getting relief from the apex court, I think the whole thing needs to be discussed. There have been frayed tempers, there have been unfortunate clashes, there have been loss of lives. All these are very sad, but I think ultimately the matter can be resolved through discussions with the stakeholders, because nobody is asking for the abolition of the quota system. The people are asking, the aggrieved sections are asking for a reform, and reform is very much possible. So, I think this is a matter that needs to be solved politically and once for all. Merit definitely has to be accorded the priority. At the same time, there has to be a balance for the backward sections or backward areas or areas that have not been developed as compared to other parts. There should be some arrangement for them for some period of time. How that would be done, that would be a matter for the politicians to decide. And I think definitely the everybody would act in the interest of Bangladesh, and we should be able to resolve the matter in the not too distant future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Huda. Mr. Touhid Hossain, you listen to what Mr. Huda said. Same question to you, I'm asking to you.
Thank you. I think Mr. Huda has put it very succinctly, very clearly. There cannot be any disagreement on one point, that quota can be there for the backward sections of the society so that they can come up. He has mentioned about the OBCs in India and the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, which is very true. They still have, and in fact, in the Indian context, there is quite a bit of politics also into this, because who are the OBCs? Now, scheduled tribe and scheduled caste, you have a formula, you have listed them. Now, who are the OBCs, other backward classes? It is the state governments which decide on the other backward classes. So that is sometimes done on political ground, that section, Ahir Jat, Gujjar, Rajput, Asgar, they used to call this. I'm telling about the 90s. Those four castes were being given advantages in Haryana because the vote banks were there. So things like that also happened there. In India, the problem is that there have been millenniums of gross injustice on the basis of birth. Because you are scheduled caste means that you have been deprived for generations and generations because of the title that you hold. In Bangladesh, as Mr. Huda has correctly mentioned, that the context is slightly different. It's not exactly that. We do not have the caste system as it is there in the Hindu scripture. We do not have that problem. So for us, there is no such thing as that some section has been, for millenniums, has been disadvantaged. Even if there is, the number is very small. We have some plain tribes and some hill tribes, the original inhabitants of this region, who in some ways they are, some disadvantaged in their livelihood, both in education and going forward in other areas. Now, the quota structure that we had, I have every doubt whether this really reflected the words and the spirit of the Constitution. Our Constitution mentions that normally there will be no discrimination. Everyone will go for on the merit, everyone will get the jobs according to merit only. But it has also mentioned that if there are certain disadvantaged communities, government may, it's within the government's right to give them certain quotas so that they can also come up. Because we want a society in which no one is left behind. A very sensitive issue is the freedom fighters quota. Say, the situation immediately after independence was different. And we had the freedom fighters. And I personally believe that at this point of time, instead of only taking a number of magistrates and likewise about 1,400, actually many more freedom fighters could have been accommodated at different levels of the government, including in the security services, including in the lower jobs where, say, there are many freedom fighters who are not highly educated. Most of them were not. So, but giving them a job, even at the much lower level, would have benefited them. And from my heart, I would have supported that, because they have fought for our independence, they have brought in the independence, and they deserve sort of rehabilitation and positions. There are some, among others, there were some, this sort of dissatisfaction that I am applying for a job and I have done better than somebody else, but because he was a freedom fighter, so he got the job. But then that has some justification, because you did not fight for the independence, he did. He has some advantages to get. Besides, this was actually something that was going to end naturally, because freedom fighters would not remain within the age range where you can apply for jobs. Over time that will go, and the problem would be over. But I think a very unfortunate and somewhat uncalled for decision was taken about the children of freedom fighters, the children and their children even. I personally feel that this was a very wrong decision, and this goes against the spirit of the Constitution. Someone is born in the family of a freedom fighter. That is an advantage or disadvantage by birth, and you cannot, on the basis of that, we cannot have a Varna, the Chatur Varna in Hinduism. We cannot have a Varna system. We cannot say that because his father or his grandfather fought, so he should get the advantage. No, his grandfather has to be respected, and forever, as long as this country remains, and which it will remain forever, we have to respect them. But then that doesn't mean that, and I'm sure that he did not go to fight the war so that his son or daughter or grandson gets some advantage for his war. He had gone to fight the war to free the people. Conversely, I would say that those who are insisting on giving the job on freedom fighter quota to the grandchildren, they are actually going against the spirit of the liberation war. That is not the spirit of the liberation war that we had, because it asked for steps against discrimination, but this is creating an unnecessary discrimination favorable to a very small section of the people. Because if you go by the numbers, in 20 crores, the number of people, descendants of the freedom fighters, genuine freedom fighters, would not be huge in that respect, and for them 30% quota, it is quite uncalled for. I would say that quota of course should remain, because we know that there are some backward sections of this. We also know that there are some backward areas, as Mr. Huda said. It's very correct. How many officers we have from the backward areas of Kurigram or Lalmonirhat? Very few. So, for example, district quota for all districts doesn't make any sense. District quota should be for, it can be a small quota, but that should be for actually. These days we can have statistics in no time at all. That how many are there from that 50 lakh of people who live in this area. You can see that very few people are there in the good position. So you give a quota to them, but you don't need to give quota for people from Dhaka, from Chittagong, from Kumilla, like that. That is one thing, and I think the corollary to the freedom fighter quota should be the freedom fighters who laid down their lives. Their children were at a disadvantage. So at least one generation, maybe the next one, could be continued for that. That would be, the number would be very small. In fact, do we know who are the people who were killed by the Pakistanis? Lakhs of people. Their children were at a disadvantage because they didn't have a father they didn't anymore have a father to look after them. So we should have gone to those areas, those segments, and given them some quota instead of just saying that you are grandchild of a freedom fighter, so you get the quota.
We have seen the High Court in its verdict says they have released the verdict. They say that it is up to the executive branch to decide whether there will be quota or not, the number of the issues. But recently, it has been referred to the Supreme Court, and government itself has decided to take the matter to the Supreme Court. As Mr. Huda asserted, basically it is a political decision, and it should come from the political arena. Now the judiciary and the executive, maybe if not in conflicting situation, but of course not in a happy mood and mood.
You see, there was a very instant reaction sort of thing that the court has quashed there, and then because the judgment had not come up by then. Now, as you said, the judgment has come up, and the court itself has said that it's a matter of the administration. Even if it has gone to the Supreme Court, we don't know what decision they will give. Let us wait for that and see what decision they give. I'm sure that the judiciary will give a decision according to the Constitution, because They are the upholders of the constitution and rule of law. So let us wait for that. In the meantime, we can only give our opinions. We can only give our opinions that what is justified and what is not from our point of view. But of course, the judiciary, the highest judiciary will finally decide what is going to happen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Touhid. We will go for a short break and come to you again. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Nurul Huda. We are going for a short break and come to you again. Well, viewers, we are going for a short break. Please keep watching. Viewers, we are back to the talk show Promise in Bangladesh, sponsored by Crown Cement. And this is Sinha Sayeed anchoring this very talk show. We are having talks with two giant speakers. One is Mr. Nurul Huda, former Inspector General of Police and Secretary to the government. Another being Mr. Touhid Hossain, former Foreign Secretary and diplomatic analyst. Well, Mr. Nurul Huda, you know very well that our main problem is one of the geopolitics. And recently the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina visited India, followed by China. And it is in the air and the social media also that so many things are taking place concerning the visit to China. Bangladesh foreign policy depends on friendship to all, malice to none. On the basis of this, is it possible in practice to keep a balance between China and India, having our own interest in mind?
Well, I am not very conversant with the norms and nuances of diplomacy. I had been in the raw policing and in the administration of this country. But this is a fine balancing act which is not beyond the intelligence and intellect of Bangladeshi diplomats and also Bangladeshi politicians. It could be a tightrope walking, but it's very much possible. When you work in national interest, every foreign policy, I think the preeminent thing is the maintenance of the national interest. We are in a tight position, all right, but then if we can protect our own interest and we can stand firm, then it is possible to do the balancing. Well, comparison with Cuba would be odious, I am sure. It's a different scenario, but Bangladeshis are no less patriotic, including their politicians, including their diplomats and others. So it should very much be possible. I mean, where we have to say no, we can say no. Where we have to say yes, we will say yes. But then in diplomacy, nobody says no. A long time back, I heard an expression. I don't know if I'm reproducing it correctly. When a diplomat says yes, he means perhaps. When he says perhaps, it's no. When it is no, it's not a diplomat. So this diplomatic skill and maneuvering, this should be very much within our abilities. And when you take the people of the country into confidence, your footing is very strong. The world leaders, including your neighbors elsewhere, they all would respect you. If you have the people's support and you are on a firm ground, then if you are not acting in group interest and in national interest, we need not fear anything. We can weather this storm if at all there is any. But I think we have the skill and the ability to go through the process, and I'm sure Bangladesh would be able. There are many serving and retired diplomats. I think there should be more than 100 retired diplomats in this country, and if expert knowledge is necessary, these are readily available. I don't want to demean those who are in service. They're equally good. So it should not be beyond our competence and ability to tide over the situation. If at all we are in a balancing act problem, balancing would be possible, and this is very much possible. We can do it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nurul Huda. I will come to you again. Well, Mr. Touhid Hossain, you are basically a diplomat and
a former diplomat.
Been in the foreign service for a long time, including having the chair of foreign secretary. So what is your understanding about the balancing in foreign policy, especially between India and China?
I would almost completely agree with Mr. Nurul Huda what he has said. There are definitely competent officials and patriotic also. So it should be possible for them to look after the interests of the country. And I also have a slight reservation about the dictum that karo sathe enmity to none, friendship with all. That may always not be possible. Because for friendship you need both the sides to be willing to have a friendly relations. Unfortunately, those have not been reciprocated by India. It's my judgment. Everyone, including you, can disagree with me. But I find that we have taken care of India's concerns, but India has not been that much forthcoming in taking care of our problems. But once I have taken care of your problems, my leverage is gone. We did not do a quid pro quo, that I give you this advantage, I will do it for you, but you in the meantime do this for me. We have not gone into that. We have acted very friendly, which is perhaps otherwise should be okay, but then because there has been no reciprocity, we have no leverages, so often we cannot take a decision which many of us think could be in our advantage. We have to go back on those because it hurts the interest of another party, say for example India. So our problem has become that there are, because of the conflicting and adversarial relation between India and China, which are both our very close friends, and we need a good relations with both sides for our interests. But because of the animosity between the two, we are often put in a very difficult situation. A decision which may go in favor of India may be seen as adversarial by China, and vice versa. That puts us in a difficult situation, and I feel that at this moment we have some difficulty with maintaining a balance because of this situation.
Mr. Nurul Huda.
I think I think I qualified by saying that is the national interest has to be determined by the politicians. And Mr. Touhid Hossain said very rightly, the diplomats have a limit. They would give certain outputs, both technical and other things. But the final decision, so the government, as he has said, that if we have indeed lost part of the leverage, or we have very little leverage left, then the responsibility devolves on the politicians. So how we can have a leverage and how we can have a relationship mutually beneficial and respecting each other's sovereignty, that would be the business of the politicians, the people who run the country.
Thank you very much. Mr. Touhid Hossain, you are having experience from the political arena of Bangladesh, that political leaders in Bangladesh, I mean position and opposition both, they are not of the same mind on the foreign policy issues, especially in the national interest. Then as a foreign secretary, you faced it. So what are your experiences about it?
I saw it more from the sidelines when I was not the foreign secretary, because I was the foreign secretary in a very specific circumstances when there was a caretaker government, and then the present government's first 6 months when virtually the opposition was almost wiped out. Now of course there is no opposition at all. The time that I spent in the Foreign Office, I have seen that sometimes decisions are not taken, although everyone almost agrees that this decision should be taken, it will be in our interest. But then because we do not have a consensus on our political consensus on our national interests, we never had this, unfortunately. In most of the countries, the party in power and the opposition have almost close relations. Just look at India. This government started when Congress was in power. Okay, and they had a pattern of relationship with India. Awami League government here and Congress government there. Congress lost the next election and BJP came to power. Congress and BJP, they have of course very strong adversarial relations, but have you noticed any major change in policy towards Bangladesh? I have not. Because it is the question of India's national interest, how to deal with Bangladesh, how to maximize their benefits vis-a-vis Bangladesh. On that point, both the diametrically opposite parties have a similar opinion. They could do this. We have not been able to do this. I remember that the Chief Minister of West Bengal, who was from the left front, he had gone to attract investment in West Bengal from Italy. It's a federal structure, you know, there are many other things. And there, one of the journalists asked a question about BJP. He said that I will answer your question after I return home. Which means that although particularly the left front hated the BJP, they still do, but they will not say a word against the BJP local politics outside of their country. That is what is looking after national interest. Unfortunately, our politicians have failed us on this. This has never happened.
I think yes. I think he points to a very important thing, very significant thing. I think what he is referring to, possibly, if I am not wrong, a kind of positive bipartisanship of the politicians are necessary. But then again, if you dig deep into it, why do we do not have? Because unfortunately, the cynics say, and you may have reason to partly agree with it, that Bangladeshi society is very polarized, and polarized politically, even socially. So that's why we cannot put at times a united face and a united stand when it is necessary. So I think we have to do a lot of deep thinking, and that unless there are certain common agreement, the reference that he said, I also remember it, because on matters that has an external affairs related, the Indian politicians would not speak outside the country, because that is a different subject. So I mean, that kind of bipartisanship and agreement of certain common thing, that has to be necessary. And in order to do that, the polarization has. Politicians definitely are not enemies. They are competitioners, I would say. I would not even call them, I won't call them combatants. They are competitioners. So the competitioners will have to have that spirit, and the last thing is the national interest. You have to agree on what is the national interest. Possibly there is a difference of opinion among them.
I fully agree on this point, yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Nurul Huda, and thank you very much, Mr. Touhid Hossain. And it is a time to go for a short break. Viewers who are going for a short break, please keep watching. Viewers, we are back to the talk show. Promise Bangladesh is sponsored by Crown Cement. And this is Sinha AMS Sayeed, sponsoring the talk show. We are having talks with Mr. Nurul Huda, former Inspector General of Police and Secretary Government to the government, and other being Mr. Touhid Hossain, former Foreign Secretary and diplomatic analyst. Mr. Touhid Hossain, budget has been announced recently, and especially in the field of investment, direct investment. There are so many budgets, there are so many economic zones for the different countries like Korea, Japan. What are your studies about the whole thing of investment in Bangladesh?
Thank you. In fact, I am not an economist, so it's peripheral to my interest. Of course, economy matters to everybody else. As far as I have seen that the investments figures for the last few years have been quite dismal. We have very little foreign direct investment coming into Bangladesh. And I am a bit taken aback also about the lack of local investments. not foreign direct only. Local investments have also been, it has got stuck at certain level of GDP and it's not progressing at all. Whereas to really go up in the economic ladder, you need a lot of investment, both from within and from abroad. You see, I have a puzzle that nobody has been able to answer. I have asked quite a few economist friends of mine, because I am a student of history. Everyone agrees that huge amount of foreign exchange have gone out of the country, have been mostly stolen money converted into dollars and taken away from the country. That's why our this level of foreign exchange reserve has come down from the 40s billions to somehow touching 20 or sometimes even less than that. Now, that is understood. But nobody takes Bangladesh taka out of Bangladesh. Why do we have this tremendous shortage of taka in the banks? Where has the money gone? You cannot do it by suddenly importing syllabus from Finland for the primary schools. You have to do it gradually and you have to allocate funds. Never we have given more than 2% of our GDP to education. It should be at least 4% to 5% if we want to achieve anything for us in the next 10, 20, 30 years. I would not go details into the budget because I am not competent for that. Maybe Mr. Nurul Huda can throw some light on
please.
Well, the economy has a number of problems. Those are macro problems. Part of that he has referred to. Then there is an allegation of lack of governance in the banking sector, and about the money laundering, suspected money laundering also, about which he has given an indication. So these are matters that we have a contractionist monetary policy. We now are in a situation where we cannot import many things, and unless you import the industrial raw materials, it has an adverse impact on the employment situation. So this is a chain reaction. So I think there is no dearth of ideas of how to get things correct. There are prominent economists in Bangladesh who have served in IMF and elsewhere. They are telling us where are the problems, why the reserves have gone up, the statistical lack that he said. Very right, there is difference of opinion between the Export Promotion Bureau and the figures given by NBR. Then how money has gone, how export proceeds have not reached this country, how some people have been very funny in taking money from the government. The bank's money is people's money, the depositors' money. How these have gone, that needs to be inquired into, and there should be very drastic action too early.
As former IG, Inspector General of Police, what is the recent focus on police in Bangladesh?
Well, would you be specific about what do you want to know?
I want to know from you that so many things are happening in Bangladesh, especially in the field of good governance, as you uttered the word good governance, and police is a part of the public administration.
Very right.
So what is your study about good governance within police?
First of all, the political direction is very important. How would you do you see, if you look at the cycle like this, you have a policy, from the policy flows the strategy, from the strategy to the tactics. The first thing is policy. How I want to do I need a people-friendly police? Because historically looking, from 1930 onwards, repression was the hallmark of policing in the subcontinent. Remember in 1947, when we became independent for first time, also in 71, we had a republican constitution as distinct from colonial or other things. We didn't have a constitution. The Government of India Act used to be the constitution. So we had a constitution which was republican, but then the rules, regulations and everything, this remained the same of the earlier time. So this is an anachronism. You have colonial rules, regulations, but you have a republican constitution. Nobody bothered about it. Since after 71, like say in the judicial appointments, which are very important, this could be regularized. The constitution is a broad document, but in order to operationalize the constitution, you need to have the rules and regulations at the earliest, very fast. So here, how police operate here depends on what is the political direction. In third world countries, like you see, the politicians do not mind shadowing the opposition politicians. Now, this is a colonial feature. Those who are engaged in constitutional politics, they need not be shadowed by intelligence organizations. You have to, the public servants there has to be realization. This is exclusively my own view, that they are also appointed representatives of the republic. They may not be elected, but they definitely, in our kind of a situation, they should deem themselves as appointed representatives of the republic. So when you say Prajatantra Karmachari, it's not something abstract or something vacuous, which means you are under the law and you act according to the law. So the realization has to be there that I belong to a public service, quite distinct from what is a domestic service. And definitely the politicians have a greater responsibility. You do not definitely want a pliable bureaucracy, because a pliable bureaucracy will not help you. There should be a neutral, merit-based bureaucracy, and then a police become a part of that, definitely. So if policemen have defaulted, there are individual instances of overriding or overkilling. The policy definitely is not bad. On paper, you see this, they're written. So how you act, even if the recent incident, if there are accusations of disproportionate use of force, the government definitely, government at the political level definitely does not want it. The particular personnel who have used the force, it could be his misreading or it could be his faulty judgment. So I mean the prevalent wisdom at times is to lay all the blame at the door of the politicians. I would not agree with that. We all have to share it, and there has to be a realization by public servants also that they have a tremendous amount of responsibility. If that is there, then this is a big problem, but you can tide over it. The colonial attitude which at times are being referred to and police are accused of, I mean, it's very difficult to defeudalize and decolonize yourself. It should come as a whole in the society. When you do that, I think it should percolate down that yes, the people have a right and people and you respect wishes of people and you become the people's police force, which is very much possible. I mean, there is nothing wrong with the laws. The constitution says what you have to do. The rules and regulations say what you have to do. You only act according to it. You can be worthy of a democratic system.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nurul Huda. Mr. Touhid Hossain, just 1 minute from you.
About this? Well,
Maybe.
I can only vouch what he has said because he speaks from the experience. And I would look forward to the day when really police becomes respected and, someone to which the common people look forward to for help. As it is, well, the British police has a very good name to the people. But the Indian police that the British had created, as he has said, that it was for a different purpose. So we have to come out of that purpose. And
I would only add here that, the demand for a good, professional, neutral police force has to come from within the society. Now, in order for that to happen, police officers and politicians have a responsibility by demonstrable action, so that you don't ask for your things. If the people say, yes, we want a forward-looking police force. So first of all, there has to be demonstrable action that yes, you are neutral and impartial, and then automatically the people would. The British police reference is very interesting. In fact, we forget that the British are a phlegmatic lot, which means not easily excitable. We Bengalis are a reactive lot, psychologically speaking. So a reactive person normally, culturally, cannot act in a phlegmatic manner. In order for that to happen, the recruitment has to be all right, the training has to be all right. These are broad policy matters. So again, you decide, you get a law enforcement or a police force you look for or you deserve. As I would only quote Robert Kennedy, very famous, he said, every country gets the law enforcement it deserves. So, but then we should, I very much agree with Touhid that yes, the policeman must be seen as someone who is a friend, and where people can have their grievances redressed, and he is a symbol of trust. That is very much necessary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nurul Huda. And thank you very much, Mr. Touhid. Then we are about to end this talk show. Well, viewers, we are about to end this talk show. And before ending this talk show, I have to summarize what the two giant speakers here opined, expressed, and focused on different issues, especially about the quota system. Both of them are of the same mind that there should be quota system, but some sorts of reforms are very much necessary for the sake of national interest and the interest of the people concerned. About the liberation war and the freedom fighters, they are of the same mind. That should not be debatable indeed. But Mr. Touhid Hossain categorically and pointedly said that quota system, limit of the quota for the freedom fighters should not be beyond the limit of sons and daughters. Grandsons, granddaughters are not the issue. That should be debated, discussed, and settled politically. And Mr. Nurul Huda also believes it is a political issue, should be settled politically. And both of them are of the same mind of the state of economy in Bangladesh. And they believe that economic policy, especially industrial policy, agricultural policy, and the policy taken by the government from time to time, should be handled with the efficiently, with the proper man at the right station. Otherwise, so many drawbacks may crop up time to time. And at the same time, about the foreign policy and the balancing between China and India. Both of them, more or less, spoke in the same line. Mr. Nurul Huda, being a former Inspector General of Police with his background from Pakistan, said that balancing is a very tough issue and that should be taken very cautiously, keeping the national interest in mind. And it depends on the leadership. And the leadership should choose those persons who are with and around him and who are away from him, so that those intellectuals and those meritorious people should come within the fold of discussions. And Mr. Touhid Hossain, being a former Foreign Secretary, feel that balancing is not so easy. It's a matter of tactics on the part of the leadership. And so many things, so many problems are in the country. But the main issue is this: we need leadership. Leadership in such mood that can ensure the future of Bangladesh. Nothing is above leadership. Everything rotates around the leadership. And that is the first and foremost problem in Bangladesh at this very moment. And thank you very much. We'll meet you again in the next talk show.